consciousness is what it's all about. Consciousness is what we certainly need. It's what we're in short supply of. We are not going to weather the cultural crises that are bearing down on this planet without a great deal of consciousness being generated. So if there is any agent in the environment, drug, teaching, practice, you name it, that actually increases consciousness, it is going to loom very important. In my experience, hallucinogenic drugs are pretty much unique in the power and the efficacy that they bring to the process of promoting consciousness. But I think you have a valid point in that the problem in our society is that we have no shamanic tradition, no schedule of initiation. We don't know whether our kids should take these drugs at 14 or 8 and this is a real problem. I've often, if in a archaic society, it's all laid out for you. The elders understand, they bring you into it, there's ritual, there's initiation. It's amazing that we're all here, some of the things we've been through. I mean, I've made the analogy to a person walking, that a psychedelic drug is like the situation of a person walking along the beach and they come upon a beautiful sailboat and they know nothing about sailing. Well, what are the odds that they will be able to enjoy the thrill of sailing if they have no teacher? And I don't mean I'm loath to buy into the notion that one human being has anything to teach another, except things like close your eyes, be quiet, turn off the music. These are teachings of great importance. Right.
I think that there's a part in there too where we've got hold of the wrong end of the stick. I don't think that consciousness can be expanded. I think it's always at its maximum, and that there are inhibitors around by, let's say, habit, and that these inhibitors can be released by drugs or can be accentuated. Obviously, tobacco is an accentuator of the inhibitor because it levels things out, and there are other drugs which will release the inhibitor so that consciousness seems to be more, but it really isn't. One is just released inhibitors. Does that make any sense?
Well, yeah, but I want to make sure who gets inhibited.
Yeah, but you see, yes. Well, now you see, now it's random. You see, it's
right.
Random.
Well, the mushroom is such a special case, It certainly draws your attention to an unusual part of reality if it's there all the time. The fact that it seems to be a communicator is puzzling. I still haven't made up my mind about it. When people ask me how I choose drugs, I started out a radical. Nobody else was talking about drugs. Now I find I'm the anchor dragging the ship because I say it should be a plant, number one. It should have a history of shamanic usage, number two. It should have a similarity to brain chemistry. And I am extremely unenthusiastic about MDMA and all these things. It's a plant with a history of shamanic usage. I always say, if you can get 2 out of the 3, let's go do it. Sure.
What turns you off?
It's simply that at 4 times the effective dose, it's approaching being toxic. There's this notion called the LD50, which is how much of a drug you have to give to 20 mice to kill 10 of them. In other words, 50% of the sample dies, right? The LD50 for MDMA is too close to the effective dose.
suggesting that the toxicity after
Absolutely, absolutely. You see, LSD is the safest drug in terms of physical. We're always speaking here of pure chemicals, not street stuff, because no one has ever figured out the LD50 of LSD. You can take 5,000 times the effective dose, and after 16 hours you just shake your head and walk away from it. Psilocybin, the LD50, is 275 times the effective dose.
what happens when you OD?
You have heart failure. You die of an acute coronary thrombosis. This is not to put down MDMA. Most drugs are toxic. What?
It's like what you talked about NDA. MDMA, I'm sure got a really interesting thing going. You can ask him after.
Well, anyway, my point is that these shamanic drugs that are hallowed by millennia of usage are much safer. The other thing about them is that they're the strongest psychedelics that exist. This is the great paradox. The safest drugs are the strongest. All it requires is courage. Courage which I do not have all the time, and in fact quite rarely for the biggies. And that's very interesting. I've said many times, the problem is not to, with regard to psychedelics, the problem is not to find the answer. The problem is to face the answer. We've got the answer. Sasha doesn't have to do another thing. We've got the answer. The question now is, do you have the guts to do it?